Playing Metal Gear Solid 2 on the hardest difficulty is usually being done with the goal to reach the highest rank possible, Big Boss. It requires you to play absolutely clean. 0 continues, 0 rations used, 0 kills, and normally 0 alerts at all. But unfortunately, the game has 3 forced alerts during the entire playthrough of the game. The Guard Rush in the Tanker chapter, and the 2 Tengu encounters in the Plant chapter. While the Tanker's Guard Rush can be tricky, players have usually found their own way to deal with this encounter. Since there's always only 3 guards active at once, juggling between these while not dying, that can be managed rather easily. But for the Plant chapter and the 2 Tengu encounters, the management is vastly harder, despite having infinite ammo snake by your side. What is the fastest and non-lethal way to deal with these encounters? And why is the Coolant Spray the tool of choice for speedrunners? And most of all, is it a glitch to cool the enemy? Let's look at some older attempts at these encounters. Here's how OddlerPro in 2009 tried to beat the Tengu 2 encounter in a fully non-lethal way. This is from a 2009 uploaded playlist where OddlerPro set up his own challenge beating Metal Gear Solid 2 in a fashionably difficult manner. Not only is he adhering to the rules of acquiring the Big Boss title at the end, but also there's no discovery at all, no damage to party members, and finally of course no interaction at all with the enemy. Which basically makes it the first Ghost Challenge speedrun as far as I'm aware, staying completely undetected, well except for those 3 pesky force alerts on you. In this variant of the Tengu 2 encounter, OddlerPro did need to break his rule of no interaction with guards, because of course you have to somehow defeat the Tengus to meet the requirement to pass forward with the next scene. His method was simple but elegant. Go north into the small area, tranquilize Snake, then take out anyone with your blunt sword in a definitely non-lethal manner. All OddlerPro needed to do every now and then was to shoot Snake again so he stays asleep, until eventually enough time has passed and no more Tengus can spawn. And thankfully we can look behind the scenes to know exactly what's happening. For that, we need to read up on some files which have been written in the early 2000s by Kenichiro Shigeno, thanks to the Metal Gear Solid 2 source code leak from April 30th. And a quick warning, however, before we begin. Konami has sent out their lawyers trying to find the culprit of said leak, and while I've acquired a copy of said source code, I do not intend to share it at all. This includes also direct video footage of that code, just to be extra safe. Instead, I'll work with something similar, pseudocode, which still keeps the logic and intent intact for today's video examples. Where for the level W44A, you have to move to the assigned area to trigger the final codec and leave through the door. It's simple as that. However, for the W45A, the second Tengu encounter, after the alert has lifted, the game will automatically load the next event. So for both instances, it is important to know what lifts the alert in the first place. The code that clears the encounter for W44A and W45A is thusly found inside of the Tengu commander file. And the logic works as follows. The game checks every frame at 60 frames per second is the amount of respawns higher or equal to the maximum amount of respawns in this level, which has been defined in the level files itself. So again, all the respawns are already used up. Additionally also, the amount of destroyed or killed Tengus in the encounter is more than the maximum respawns. So not only need to be all of the respawns be used up, they also need to have the maximum amount of destroyed Tengus match that number. And then thirdly, the final check is if the quiet time value is above 10. Now while all that can be easily followed, take out enough Tengus and move on. The quiet time is interesting. This is the intended timer to check against. So how does one increase that timer to 10? Each frame of the game plays out, the game checks if the respawns in the encounter have exceeded the maximum respawns in the game. If this is true, then ticks the quiet time 1 up by 1 frame. Alright, that's not so bad. We already know the comparison, of course, having the respawn count being equal or even higher than the maximum respawn amount in total. But this time there's a delay of 10 frames before the commander declares the encounter to be over, letting the alert reset and the Tengus go into a specific destroy phase. But when I found this run and then accompanying forum post on the GameFAQs forums, someone else also had a very interesting comment. Coolant Spray. Alright, but how does one defeat enemies with the Coolant Spray that, at best, just annoys the enemies? Well, the answer can already be found in an even older speedrun. Welcome to 2005's single-segment extreme difficulty speedrun of the North American release of Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty for PlayStation 2. With the run in question, 𝐇𝐚𝐮𝟓. Now, 𝐇𝐚𝐮𝟓 has been infamous for another thing in the speedrunning scene, but that's a story for another time and not now. While it is not known exactly who came up first with this strategy, 𝐿𝐿 was the earliest one whose video still survived until today, thanks to the Speed Demos archive. So as we see here, first go north to the top end of the level and stay in the enclosed space. Look down and shoot Snake in the chest to give him a hard shot which puts Snake to sleep for the maximum time possible. Then get out the coolant spray and start spraying the Tengus in front of you as they approach you, while they ignore Snake on the floor. Then finally, after 60 seconds have passed, the game will just drop the alert without a single kill and let you pass onwards to the Metal Gear race encounter. So what do we do with the coolant? On the Speed Demos archive, this was described as such. This glitch works in both Sons of Liberty and Substance, but the requirements for making it work in Substance are so strict that it's not feasible for a speedrun. You should consider this a Sons of Liberty only trick. The trick is performed in the last phase of Tengu 1. You start by hiding behind one of the boxes at the south of this phase to lure Tengus into that area. When the Tengu approaches, spray them with coolant, and repeat this until all available Tengus are being sprayed. You now need to continue spraying the Tengus to gradually push them back, and eventually behind the box you are hiding. You may need to adjust your position, usually to move forward, at times, and you may need to quickly trank one of the Tengus in the top level that shoots at you. Once all Tengus are behind the box, the game should consider you out of their line of sight, and this will trigger the end of the alert phase. However, you should leg it out quickly before they realize what's up, and watch out for any others on the top level. This description was for describing the Tengu 1 phase skip with the coolant, and it generally works like this by just playing the game. For the second Tengu encounter, a similar approach can be conjured. In the second Tengu encounter, you need to tranquilize Snake quickly and stand near the bottom or top ends of the circle in the narrow path. This limits or rather focuses the Tengus together so you can keep spraying them with the coolant spray over and over again until the game lets you pass to the next stage. Especially for the early 2000s of speedrunning, that was quite advanced stuff that we even use these days now. But hold on, when we checked out the code which defines when the alert gets dropped, nothing's been said there about guards just waiting or pausing, and the coolant spray is also not mentioned there. So what gives? There was another. The entire check block has been expanded by an OR case. For non-programmers, this is quickly explained as so long as the first check or the second check are true, the entire check is handled as true and the code inside will be executed, meaning the second check can completely ignore the first one and let us stop the encounter. And what is that second check? Well, if the quiet time 2 is more than 60 times 10 or 600. Now you're thinking, wow, 600 frames? That's only 10 seconds. Imagine we can end the Tengu encounters in 10 seconds. But that's the problem. How does this quiet timer 2 increase in the first place? For every frame the game checks for each Tengu unit the following aspects. If the Tengu being looked at is in the event Tengu damage weight status, the quiet time 2 gets increased by 1. Since it's being done every frame for every unit of Tengu active, this timer can be increased by 6 per frame if all of these Tengu are in that damage weight at the same time. And how do Tengus get assigned this event Tengu damage weight status? Well, the comment says, ダメージ状態から復帰していない 𝐿𝐿, which can be translated as has not recovered from damaged state, with the additional word for insurance, 𝐿𝐿. So right away we know from the definitions, aha, there's something causing this state to appear, which is used as an insurance in the game, a backup, so to speak. But there is more as well. If we check for the phrase 𝐿𝐿 again, we find also a variable called quiet time 2, which is just marked in the comment as insurance, another indicator that there's both a fallback and that the Tengu being damaged weight status and this quiet timer 2 are related to each other. Now if you look further, there are two variants of the Tengu files actually. There's the Tengu type A and the Tengu type B. And specifically in this Tengu type B file is a logic file that checks if a Tengu is stuck in damage status for too long. The function Tengu retire check uses this event Tengu damage weight and sets it as active. Shigeno has used the command here beforehand and says 𝐿𝐿判定 insurance verdict judgment decision ダメージ状態から復帰していない not recovered from damaged state. Aha! Another indicator for the insurance policy at place. If they haven't recovered for long enough, something insurance. And if you read then the actual check, the logic of the code, the if clause, it reads as such. If the thing values of the Tengus, of which they are 3, are stuck to 4, damage status 0, 0, That's being defined as they are taking damage. And then a few more aspects need to be true in order for the wait state to be given to the Tengu. They need to be stuck in this damage status for more than 3,600 ticks, or 60 seconds, because the game is running at 60 frames a second. Additionally, they also need to be knocked choked, as is being used in the code as hang. And also, they need to have more than 0 health. They need to technically be alive. And also, there's even a check if these Tengus are about to faint from, say, the M9 shots. Only when all of these things are true does the Tengu instance get applied with the Tengu wait status. Alright, great. Just get the Tengus all in the state, wait for 600 ticks, and then you're good to go. But remember, the status event Tengu damage wait is given out if a Tengu is for more than 3,600 frames in the thing status 400, and not being choked while being alive and not about to faint. And that's why this takes so long. In order to even get quiet time 2 to increase at all, you first have to have the Tengus being stuck for 60 seconds in their damage wait status. Only then quiet time 2 can increase, meaning the optimal way to do this trick here in order to skip the Tengu fight is to first frame have the Tengus to be stuck for 60 seconds, plus increase the quiet time 2 as quickly as possible, which would be 6 Tengus, and then per frame they update quiet time 2, meaning the 600 frames would be reached in 1.6 seconds. So the minimum amount that this encounter would still take, if you could first frame freeze all of the 6 Tengus at once, would be 60 seconds plus 1.6 seconds, for a total of 61.6 seconds. And so far, there's no other way other than waiting for 60 seconds at minimum in order to reach the status so we can increase the quiet time too. Alright, then let's check again. With the live Sons of Liberty run, how do we manipulate the Tengu into this 400 state? Well, thanks to the leaked debug build of MGS2, we can exactly see it in this print of the thing values and more. Every time you spray a Tengu with the Coolant Spray, or if you punch them, choke them, etc., the recovery state from that is defined as 400 for those thing values. So when looking at 𝐸𝐻𝐼's run, all he did was just spraying all of these Tengus and the encounter ends. And now we can exactly trace the logic behind this execution of the code. Let's analyze it live. At the start of the fight, Cody goes north and tranquilizes Snake so that he does not interrupt the Tengu and we can get their attention. That way all Tengu come and attack us, leading to them staying close and we can just over and over again spray them with the Coolant Spray. This counts as an attack, and thankfully their recovery animation takes quite a while. For the first frame of being hit by the Coolant, it takes roughly 200 frames to recover, which is 3.3 seconds. During these 200 frames, the Tengu stays in the 400 state, and we can reset this recovery animation by spraying them with the Coolant again. The state 400 stays active the entire time. The Tengu are not being choked, their life is over 0, and they're not about to faint. And that is the perfect situation for which now, after 1 minute of spraying these Tengu, that the status now changes to the desired event Tengu damage wait, and now every frame, and per every Tengu active, the quiet time 2 increases. Now in 𝐸𝐻𝐼's run here, 1 Tengu was not sprayed at all unfortunately, and it seems like 1 or even 2 of them have been lost and had their CT3 values reset. So the video analysis shows it's not quite exactly changing the alert status after we hit quiet time 2 of 600, but in theory this works out. But if you remember, the guide on Speedrunners archive said that the requirements for substance were too tight, so we should consider this a Sons of Liberty only trick? Well, how do people deal with the Tengus afterwards? Well, for that, let's check out 2009's Anonymity Hope's Tengu Fights. Here we see 2 very interesting things. Back in 2009 already, we see that the Tengu 1 can be skipped by using a glitch that pushes Raiden far enough into the door so that he touches the load zone behind it, leading into W45A, and never needing to finish Tengu 1. So this is by now the default way of how speedrunners deal with the Tengu 1 encounter. Doesn't matter which difficulty, they always run to that door, lean against it, punch kick in FPV, and let go of the FPV while they are in this turn and facing towards the door. Super simple, anyone can do it, and even on European Extreme, we just have enough stuns, you make your way there unharmed, and can do it with all the time you need. And because it's such a standard these days, that's why so many people think the Coolant Skip can only be used in Tengu 2, which is not quite right. As we've seen already here today, it could also be used in Tengu 1, but just running through the door and glitching through is so much faster still, so we don't need that even. So that's why usually this cooler method is just considered Ubi or Tengu 2, But again, it could also be done in Tengu 1. But what did Anon do then in the Tengu 2 room? Well, for Tengu 2, this time a completely different strat was used to solve the encounter. He specifically aims to have Snake closer to the bottom of the circle and then tranquilize him with the M9 again. Then he takes to the AK and positions himself in the small room at the entrance, and in first-person view knocks out every Tengu with ease. The key here is the distance to Snake. If you tranquilize him too early, so that he ends up too far away from you, Snake immediately gets up again and keeps fighting the Tengus. Per difficulty, the amount of Tengus that need to be defeated is 42 for the lowest difficulty on very easy and easy. Then normal has 58, hard has 90, and 122 Tengus need to be taken care of on extreme or European extreme. And of course, as you can imagine, needing to fight almost 3 times as many Tengus on the top end versus the bottom end takes quite some time. In the end, this fight method displayed by Anon still takes multiple minutes, as established earlier. You need to take out 122 of Tengus on European Extreme here. And thus the later following iterations after Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance, so Metal Gear Solid 2 HD and Metal Gear Solid 2 Master Collection, runners found their own ways of dealing with the Tengu 2 encounter, while skipping the first fight with ease now thanks to Raiden glitching through the door. Now if you watch this run here by SnakeEater132 from December 2013, you can see, hold up, the Coolant glitch is back! And that's something that was discovered to be possible in October 2013 by user NoLoon via this charming handcam footage behind me. The original credit was for the user Viewtify, which is a username that I was able to trace back to a log from the Speedrunners archive live chats in February 2012. If this Viewtify is the same person as above, I can't say. Sadly, a lot from the time has been lost or was in some private chat groups like MSN Messenger and later Skype. But still, while this was finally put into video, besides Snake Eater, nobody else did this method in the run still. It was still widely considered to be for multi-segment only. But why does the Coolant Skip not work anymore the same way? Let's pause the timeline for a moment and return back to look at the source code of Metal Gear Solid 2, because what I did not show you yet is the full if clause for the commander check. After the line where the quiet time 2 is checked to be increased, the final paragraph now simply checks if the player has the Coolant Spray enhanced. Then it resets the quiet time back to 0 if that is true. So even if you hold the Tengus in check with the Coolant Spray and the quiet time 2 would start increasing, this specific code change will on the same frame again reset the quiet time 2 back to 0. Now the fix will be simple. Just unequip the Coolant Spray. We know that the Tengu are stuck in the coolant recovery animation for another 200 frames. And if you have ideally all 6 Tengus stuck, you'd only need 100 frames of these 200 to reach the required quiet time 2 of 600 frames. But you can see how that can be tricky, right? 100 frames is around 1.6 seconds. The window is tiny, and without the tools to analyze this trick further, runners simply opted to not use the coolant trick for Substance or HD versions of Metal Gear Solid 2. So, without being able to properly analyze the code back in 2013, of course, while the coolant exploit was known, it was just put on the side as a multi-segment only strategy. Thankfully, in the same year, another runner has found an alternative method to skip the Tengu encounter. Meet the Choke Skip is introduced by 𝐾_will in December 2013. For the setup, runners used specific methods to delay and praying that Snake plays along. Because this strategy involves utilizing Snake taking care and not dying to the other 5 Tengus, while we go and borrow one of them inside the side room to choke again and again before they break out. On hindsight, this strategy is quite elegant. It utilizes the same internal logic and reasons why the Coolant Skip works. Keep one Tengu into suspended state 400 until the timer reaches 3600 ticks. Then once that happens, they start letting go and choking the Tengu again. But isn't there a check against stagnating the Tengus during choking? Well, each time the Tengu is not in a choke state, the quiet time 2 can rise. But unlike the Coolant Spray, if you choke a Tengu again to restart the suspended animation, the quiet time 2 does not reset, it just pauses. And eventually, this single Tengu has been delayed for long enough that the quiet time 2 hits 600 ticks again and the encounter is over. Like I explained earlier, however, it is key that Snake plays along with us. He needs to survive for long enough, and especially if you perform a single segment speedrun, Snake is always at his lowest support level. So hey, let's talk about Snake's support level quickly. Thanks to having access to the source code once again, we can also view the levels including the developer comments. One of these interesting comments is the table as displayed here. The page has been written by Yamashita and describes how Snake's support level is set per difficulty and how it progresses per continue in the encounter. Snake's level defines certain behavior of his during the encounters. His level defines the amount of shots he does and his wait time before he starts firing. On level 0 to 2, for example, he only shoots 3 times. On level 3, he does 5. And then it keeps increasing to 2 shots each per level until it maxes out at level 8 with 15 shots in consecutive order. Same with his wait time. It gets shorter the higher his level is. On level 0, he waits 54 frames and it decreases per level increase, so he shoots more often until on level 10, where he shoots after waiting 14 frames only. With his level, it also changes how far forward Snake pushes and how quickly he does push and how much time he stands around to inspect. It's an interesting interconnected system that our NPC Snake has. And as a reminder, on very easy, Snake immediately starts at level 7 and it goes all the way down until he starts at level 0 for Extreme and European Extreme. For those difficulties, there's also more aspects. On very easy, he truly has infinite ammo and infinite rations to hand out. But on easy difficulty already, his rations are actually limited to 9, including the reloads per gun, the SOCOM, the M4, and the RGB6. Wait, Snake can use the RGB6? Either way, it trickles down until on European Extreme where, naturally, Snake does not give out any rations, but even his magazines are limited to 3 reloads per weapon. So, for the Tengu 2 encounter on European Extreme, if you want to do everything first try, you better hope that he can handle 5 Tengu on screen alone while being Snake level 0. In conclusion, the chokehold mechanic can work as well, yes. But as we know today, there's a huge issue with this trick. You can only hold a single Tengu into the 4-0-0 state, and that single Tengu needs to increase the quiet time too on his own. It takes repeatedly grabbing and letting off the Tengu to both not have the Tengu in the choke state, because that interrupts specifically the damage weight status. And while recovering from the choke, then only for 2 seconds each roughly, the quiet time too increases. All that while also making sure not to have another Tengu in the room suddenly with you, hoping that Snake doesn't die dealing with the other Tengus, and additionally not screwing up the trick in any other way. Say grabbing the Tengu quickly enough, accidentally touching the Coolant Spray again, which completely resets the quiet time 2 back to 0, and whatnot. And another little side note as well, this trick really can only be used on Extreme or European Extreme difficulty anyway, because on lower difficulties, the values for these Tengus and guards in general are much lower. So for example, on normal difficulty, you can only grab and chokehold a guard 9 times before they effectively get knocked out. And the knocked out Tengu is treated like a defeated Tengu, so they despawn and can't be used anymore for the chokehold method of skipping this encounter. For anyone interested, the exact values are 17 for Extreme, European Extreme, 13 for Hard, 9 for Normal, 7 for Easy, and 3 only for Very Easy. Now let's do some math. If you let go from a Tengu, they recover from their chokehold in around 150 frames, which is roughly 2.5 seconds. While keeping them in chokehold requires you to choke them again after around 220 frames or a little more than 3.5 seconds. But you can easily stretch the time to 5 seconds or around 300 frames even, if you're not like immediately choking again after they start struggling. So meaning, on European Extreme, with 17 chokes at most, you can choke and hold them for a maximum of almost 85 seconds. Hard only allows you to hold them for at most around 65 seconds, barely close enough to keep the Tengu for the 60 seconds required suspension. But then you also need to let go and choke them again in time to increase the quiet time too, which, while holding a single Tengu, takes sadly around 10 seconds at least, depending on how much you can stretch that animation time before you have to grab the Tengu again, as to not break the timer chain that needs to be above 3600, that's right. And these Tengu, after letting go, recover within roughly 150 frames. So you need around another 5 chokes at least, which you need to reserve for the final skipping part. So yeah, let alone from that, makes the chokehold skip rather tricky to pull off on a non-extreme or European extreme difficulty. That's why back then, runners have done a specific setup of how to hold and wait with the Tengu in your arms. It's completely arbitrary, but it helps you to follow along. And let's be fair, they also didn't know better these days. They re-choked the same Tengu for 10 times, then let go and re-grab the Tengu. They're choking 2 more times for 13 times, and then letting go again. After that, it's constantly grabbing and letting go, until eventually, hopefully, that quiet time too is increased to 600, which they didn't know back then, but that's effectively what happened. And this execution actually leads to the desired effect. The quiet time 2 increases and does not reset, even if you choke a Tengu again. However, runners did not need to keep holding the Tengu in chokehold at the end once they reach the Tengu weight status. Again, they didn't know that, but now we know that and can judge them for that. Most fascinating in the end is that if you let go of the Tengu for the last time and they faint, even that transition of the Tengu dropping on the floor until they are despawned keeps the Tengu in the 4-0-0 state, which makes it still valid for the quiet time 2, even after they can't be choked anymore. Because normally if you choke kill a guard or Tengu, the game also sets that guard's life to 0, instantly removing the weight status. But by slowly choking them out until they faint, the life stays above 0, and at the same time they're not in the faint transition either. Hey guys, editing house here, or well, now recording house again. That last thing that I just described, where you slow choke out a Tengu until they just despawn on their own, because you can't keep choking them anymore, that status lasting for 450 frames, I literally just found out this week. So if you're wondering why did this video take 3 months to come out after the leak when I already had the necessary core answers already, that's why I've been reading up, I've been learning so much about the game, and hopefully in the future new videos will come out quicker because I know much better how to read the source code and extract information from that. It's really well done, but man, sometimes you still find so many small details like this despawn animation, for example, where visibly the Tengu's not available on screen anymore, but still being in the data active. It's just crazy details you don't even read in the code, you just have to play it yourself, I guess. So yeah, that's why it took so long. Let's keep on. Which makes the finale of 𝐵𝐵 run here fascinating, since you'd expect it not to work anymore, since it didn't suspend the Tengu for long enough in the 4-0-0 state without chokeholding him. But those few frames the Tengu still lay on the floor, enough to finally eclipse the 600 frames needed for the quiet time 2 to trigger the end of the encounter. So I just did the math. If the Tengu stays active on screen for 450 frames in order to reach quiet time 2 of 600, you only have to keep choking and letting go necessarily from the choke the Tengu like one time to meet quiet time 2 of being 150. So potentially on hard you could do it. Yes, you only have 13 chokes in total to do this with, but if you like really stretch it, 13 may just be enough. More testing needed, but at least for normal, I know it's definitely not ideal. Like there's not at all a chance you have enough chokes there. So what do runners do in normal? That's when world record holder Platonic Guy comes into frame. Around November 2021, he and 𝐇𝐚𝐮 third together, which you also of course know from various GDQ runs of his, they'd done some testing to re-establish again the Coolant Skip as a viable method to deal with the Tengu 2 encounter. Also Tengu 1, but that's beside the point. And it was shown that it actually works. We can use it. And then later, at the end of 2022, when the Metal Gear Speedrunner Discord had hosted a tournament for Metal Gear Solid 2 on the normal difficulty, where yours truly was second place by the way, that trick was actively used by everyone again, making it the de facto way how to deal with the Tengu 2 encounter. Alright then, let's inspect again what actually happens during this execution of the Tengu 2 skip using the Coolant Spray. So we know we have to get the Tengus into the 4-0-0 state for more than 3600 frames, as displayed by CT3 or current free. Then the quiet time starts to rise, but only if you don't have the Coolant Spray equipped. That's important. And in the old Sons of Liberty versions of this, of course this was not a problem, because the coolant check wasn't there in the code. So all we needed to do was to spray these Tengus for more than a minute, and then rapidly the quiet time 2 counter goes up to 600 ticks. And with MGS2 running at 60 frames per second, that means if you spray 6 Tengus at the same time and have them all about 3600 at the same time, it would only take the quiet time 2 to go beyond 600 frames in 1 2/3 of a second, or roughly 1.6 seconds. On the Sons of Liberty versions, this can be done quite easily and doesn't require any timing whatsoever, really. And what is important to know is how long it takes for these Tengus to recover after you stop spraying them. If you spray a coolant for exactly 1 frame, then the Tengus remain for around 200 frames in their 4-0-0 suspension state. If you PPK the Tengus, then they stay in the recovery for 232 frames. However, it needs to be stated that the PPK fallover animation has one problem. As soon as the Tengus are stood up fully again, their status updates and they return back to the attack mode. even if just for a single frame. It doesn't matter if you spray them with the coolant immediately again. That effect does not come first in order if you inspect the logic inside the code. So for Substance and onwards, so the HD and Master Collection versions of Metal Gear Solid 2 as well, just spraying the Tengus won't let you trigger the failsafe of 𝐸𝐻𝐻𝐿 2. However, if you still reach the state of having the Tengus reach the damage weight status and then unequip the coolant, if enough of the Tengus are in that state, together their total output can still hit the required 600 frames for the 𝐸𝐻𝐿 2 trigger to activate. So these days, when I execute this Coolant Skip with the Tengus in the Tengu 2 encounter, I look at the few key things to look at. Well, first, of course, again, you start as normal. You turn around into Snake, prank him. You go down to the line as you see on the map, and you wait there for the Tengus to approach you. Just start spraying them if they're close. And if not all of them are in range yet, but you see them come close, maybe reset your timer. I personally don't immediately start looking at the time when I start spraying. I first make sure that ideally all of the Tengus are within my spray range. Only then I quickly check the timer, which we can thankfully do these days now thanks to the HDFix 4.00 update, giving us an overlay of showing us the time. But you can also just run the timer on your phone if you're playing on console and check that time there. From the moment on where you say, okay, now I spray all of the Tengus, take 60 seconds, and check of course after 30 seconds and take a step forward to still be within reach of these Tengus. You got 3 seconds time to unequip the coolant, step forward, re-equip it, and keep spraying them again to not lose their weight status. And then at the very end, when you have reached 60 seconds of constant spraying, I usually go from left to right, and I turn to the left side Tengus to PPK or copy through them, because these have been sprayed after the longest break. So the right ones are the freshest, the left ones are the oldest I want to reset so they stay for the longest time in 4.00. And that overall together should be an absolutely safe way how to execute this trick. But when could the Tengu skip still fail? If a Tengu gets away from you because they get moved too far to the right or too far back, they reset out of their damage weight status, and you can basically consider that Tengu lost and useless for the purpose of the Coolant Skip. It's only worth resetting the Tengus once they left, even if they get close to you, as their current free timer won't be high enough to count for the damage weight status, but for all the other Tengus are ready for the 𝐸𝐻𝐿 2 to come into place. But if that happens with too many Tengus, meaning that they get away and their CT3 resets, well, then you're definitely in a bad spot. It was also found out, by the way, from Platonic Guy, that you can use stuns to have the same effect. You just toss them into the room over and over again, but the problem is, of course, on higher difficulties, you don't have that effect. For that, you would need the Infinite Wig, and at least for the current speedruns, the special New Game Plus items like Stealth and, of course, the wigs are not allowed to be used. So it really was only effective for very easy difficulty, where you have like 50 stuns, and there again, it would be faster to not to suspend them for a minute, because just fighting them normally would be around 50 seconds. So it is way faster for the Tengu 2 encounter on very easy to fight them normally rather than using the stuns. But you should at least know it's there, and it is exactly the same logic. Suspend them for long enough, they're not dying, they're not being choked, so 𝐸𝐻𝐿 2 also increases quite quickly to the 600 mark. Alright, so after you heard all of this here, I got one question to you. Is this a glitch or rather an exploit? And should this trick actually be allowed for the glitchless category? I'll let you decide in the comments down below. I know what I think, and I think I'll ask the speedrunners in the forum post. But that's been all here for today. Thank you so much for watching, and of course I hope you took something from this. If at minimum, at least everyone should now finally understand how properly the Tengu skip works, how this 𝐸𝐻𝐿 2 exploit works, and no matter what you choose, either choke skip or of course, coolant skip, you make the right choices now because you understand exactly what happens behind the scenes. And that, I think, is one of the greater benefits we have now thanks to the MGS2 source code leak. So whoever did that, thank you. And stay in hiding. Until then, my name is Hostess. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day and catch you later. Bye-bye.